I speak to you in the name of God, who is our Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer. Amen. Please be seated. Now that I know that we can jump around those hymns like that, it's tough. I make a mistake and you folks fix it, so thank you. I don't know why I cut off that hymn when I sent it there. That's not a good thing. But anyway, my apologies. You handled it like troops. You were very, very good. Today's gospel offers us a story which has often been spoken of in places like these about the sinner being redeemed, or indeed about the need for searching people and so on. But as I read the scripture this week, I hear the story of a teacher who people desperately, desperately wanted to hear. They heard about this Jesus and they wanted to come and hear if the things they heard were actually true. And so we know that the people had come along with the Pharisees to hear what Jesus himself had to say. I mean, they'd heard stories, wild stories. Already by this time in Luke, we know that Jesus has been traveling and the people have heard about how Jesus came into the synagogue and amazed everybody there. Now, some people say that he's the son of Joseph, the carpenter, and you really want to know if that could really be the guy who's talking like this. They heard that he called an unclean spirit out of 2 or 3. Word is that he healed Simon's mother-in-law of a terrific fever. Oh, and then there was the leper, and a paralytic, and a man with a withered hand. Oh, of the leper, he actually embraced a leper. Good Lord, deliver us. Could it possibly be true? I need to see this man for myself. Some heard that even through the tumultuous waters he walked, that he had stilled the storm and set aside the fears of those who waded into the waters of life and were frightened. So they came to hear. He was teaching different things. It was said that he was teaching that the poor and the hungry, the lost and the forsaken, the rejected and the lonely, that they were in the Lord's favor, that they were blessed. He even went so far as to declare that those who were so full of themselves right now will get their comeuppance. Can you imagine? Who is this man? So they wanted to hear him, and especially the Pharisees wanted to hear him. They wanted to know, these protectors of the law, if what he said was actually true. Word is he's carousing and drinking and eating with people that nobody else would even hang with. I want to hear if it's true. And so they came. And when they came and they heard him speak, they immediately objected and said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! What are you saying? It's said that you eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners. And understand that these were undesirables." And so Jesus responds with 2 parables. The parable of the lost sheep and the parable of the lost coin. Who among you, having lost one of your sheep, does not scour the hillside to find that sheep and return it to safety? And when you do, rejoice and throw a party. A party! I love a party. But these Pharisees don't strike me as the people who like to party. I heard there was never a Pharisee in Newfoundland. If there was, we sent him to Toronto. Pharisees, man. What is this rejoicing you're talking about? Or the widow who loses a coin doesn't sweep and sweep and sweep until she finds what she's looking for. And again, rejoice when she finds it. See, I think this story is about the one who searches, not necessarily about the one who's lost. In our time, in our day, right now, we think about ourselves. Think about those that we know who walk into the waters of life's many, many problems, who feel the turmoil that comes with sometimes living life, knowing that across the waters from here to places like Afghanistan or Syria or Sudan. There are people crying to be free from pain and looking for hope. Today, in this moment, there are those across our city who are unsure about what they will eat next or where they will sleep tonight. Right now in this church, there are likely those of you who are struggling. It may be a relationship. It may be your work. It may be an addiction. It may be life itself. I don't know. But I swear I feel in my bones that all of us who've waded into this water want to be found. Want somebody to reach across the water to lend us a hand. Show us we're loved. Remind us of Jesus. And the assurance that we hear Jesus give the Pharisees, those killjoys, is that there is joy and rejoicing. With joy you shall draw water from the springs of endless life, from the living will of God. See, the one who searches for us is determined. The one who searches for us never gives up. The one who searches for us will scour and scour until we are found. When I was 10 years old, my father bought a beautiful 1980 Bonaire pop-up camper. Man, this thing was fancy. You know, you cranked it up, and it went up, and then the ends came out, and it had the brown canvas, and we got in it, and we slept, and Dad said, for the love, you know who, we can say it in here, Jesus, don't touch the canvas, because it's going to leak. And then we touched the canvas, and it would leak. And he would drive us all over Newfoundland, and he'd park this thing in gravel pits, you know, because that's what you did in Newfoundland. What do you need parks for? Only losers pay for those. We can park in a gravel pit. And there's a lake nearby where I can fish, and I can leave my wife at 5 in the morning with 3 children and come back at 6 at night, and she'll love it. And so we were on this excursion to Marystown, down to Boot, if you know Newfoundland, down to Bureau Peninsula. And myself and my other brother Daryl were in the back seat doing what a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old do. We were fighting. And my father must have declared 100 times, I swear by the name of all that is holy, if the two of you don't knock it off, I am going to stop this car, and I'm going to put you out, and you are going to be down here on the Bureau Peninsula stranded for the rest of your godforsaken life, and nobody wants you. He meant business. Now, he would have never done it. So we get to the Irving gas station, and all I could see was Coke and chips. And so I said, Mom, 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 can I have $2, please? Can I have $2? And so she gave me a $2 bill. We used to have those. And I ran into the gas station, and I got, there were corn puffs on the front shelf. Oh my God, corn puffs. So I got the corn puffs and the Coke, and I came outside, and I was so excited to get in the back seat and brag to Daryl that I had all this, when all I saw were the taillights of that 1980 Bonaire camper pulling out on the road and leaving. Oh, I wept. I wept. And what went back through my mind were all the words that my father said about us fighting and how he was going to leave us. And I thought, he's finally lost it. I pushed him too far. And it was a little 4-lane highway, and he had this 1971 Pontiac Laurentian, this big boat of a car. And he went all the way, and I just ran across 4 lanes of traffic, crying like some kind of a crazy child. I was 10. And I go running across the road, and I'm running and running and running, and all of a sudden I look on the other side, and I see the Pontiac Laurentian and trailer coming back, and it's going at a completely outrageous rate of speed. And it has to go back to the next turnaround and come back, and then he turns around and he comes back, and he picked me up, and I got in the back seat, and my other brother Daryl said, "Are you okay?" He never thought to bring that question up when they pulled up. I know. You don't know. I do. You know, what I remember is my father and how desperate he was to get me back in that car. How heartbroken he was that he left me. how he knew I was out there all by myself, scared and alone. And he knew that there would be voices in my head that said I was meant to be there alone, and that that wasn't true. And a man who wasn't given a lot to emotion was very, very emotional. And he was ready to drive that car, towing that trailer over rocks and field and trees and stumps if he had to get back to his son, his child. He was going to seek me out and get me back safe. See, I think that's the way God pursues you and me. I think sometimes we feel left by the side of the road, not because God puts us there, but because those voices in our heads leave us in some place of despair. And then we need the one who searches for us to remind us that there is joy in who we are. That we come from the waters of baptism where we are assured that we are God's beloved. In today's gospel, Jesus looks into the face of the Pharisees in injustice and a sense of narrow-mindedness and walls and borders and all of the restrictive parts of life that the law keepers were focused on, and tried to remind them that it's about love and about joy and about justice. And that God is ever in pursuit of God's own. Jesus points out that God calls us to see past the narrow-mindedness of the few and the piety and the self-awareness of some of the people in churches today who say, well, those people are not going to get in. These stories aren't about lost sheep or a coin, not really. They're really about a shepherd and a widow who risked everything to go and look for what was long lost. They're stories about a God who's willing to go looking for God's lost children even more fervently than my father was looking for me that morning. That's what these stories are about. God rejoices every time anyone is drawn back into a relationship with God. Anytime people choose life, anytime someone lives into his or her potential, anytime we help another, anytime in any way that we find joy, God rejoices. Pure joy. Now the scribes and the Pharisees, they don't know pure joy. They're busy complaining about those who have it. You don't want to be that person. Wow, wow. No, you want to be the person who knows that God rejoices in our belovedness. That's who we are. Today is September the 11th. And yet, you know, we can be the widows. We can be the shepherds. We can be those who emulate what God has done for us by seeking, by reaching, by scouring, by making sure that those who feel rejected, alone, and forgotten know that there's somebody with a hand held out. Today is September the 11th. 15 years ago this Sunday, Wells Crowther went to work like any other day to his job as an equities trader in the World Trade Center. And after the second tower was hit, the one in which he was in, he led everyone he could find down the steps to safety. And then he went back for more. And after leading them to safety, he went back for more. And then he went back again. And then the tower collapsed. On that day, this talented, athletic, good-natured, good-looking, but in so many ways ordinary human being did an extraordinary thing, giving his life to make sure others could live on. On that day, God used Wells Crowther to find people who were lost. Now, we're not all going to run into a World Trade Center. But believe me when I tell you that the good news is that in this day, God is using you and me to seek and find the lost. I've seen it here. I know that the waters of baptism through which you have walked have guided you as a people to seek and serve, to heal and long, to strive for dignity, to reach towards making the world restored. And I implore each of us to hear that word and to live further into the good news that God has given us. Amen.